further participation.
Oh, for,
You know, the one that we do online.
I think we're just gonna have to,
By the way,
a lot of this stuff from.
Yeah. And so we,
well,
Mr.
it's
and
going
I,
to
and some of that was
by the way, we're live now.
okay. So being a graduate is a tech, right? No, usually we know that it can happen. So today we figured on the agenda so that we had forum, take every chance we have to try to pass this instead of delay.
We're live.
Thank you all for joining us live on our YouTube channel. We're about to get started shortly. Just a friendly reminder for anyone that's watching, on our Foreman website under the Parents tab, then the LSC tab, then the Agendas tab.
The camera's over there.
Oh, great.
I think that I'm looking at you.
I'm just receiving text updates related to my book. That and my headache.
You can get started on the agenda, take roll call, and then I can share additional information.
Yeah, and I hope for that I won't be there at those comments. But I meant more like oh, okay. I was like, this is okay on you. Do you hear from any of the students indicating that they intend to be here?
So all the students confirmed that they were not going to be present in today's meeting, and also Fatima said she was not going to be able to be present.
Do you have that? Yes. Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, let me know further now.
Ms. Khan?
Yes.
Fatima will not be here. Here, Mr. Flores?
Here.
Mr. Garces?
Present.
Ms. Lopez? Do we need to call the individuals not present?
No, you can just indicate it on the agenda.
And Ms. Vanessa McKay? Present. Mr. Anthony
Present.
So since we do not have quorum, we will not be approving or amending the agenda or the minutes. Or the budget. The budget transfers. I did want to go over budget updates because when we done it, there was still some pending appeals. Has there been any feedback on the way we were feeling at the senior positions and
So, just to give you an update on the appeals that I mentioned during the budget season, the appeals did work in our favor, and they did end up giving us 2 special education positions back, the ones that they had taken away. But out of the 4 FCCA positions, they only gave us 2 back. So we will reevaluate, they want us to reevaluate our numbers, our special education numbers at the start of next school year to then reappeal if there are any additional needs for CCAs.
Do you anticipate that will be the case?
It's too early to tell because
Okay.
we need to get the enrollment of the incoming 8th graders and we need to review their IEPs to see their needs.
In terms of then those two that are missing, like financially, what sort of deficit are we looking at with those that we would, if we want to have them and they don't get approved, how much money are we talking that we need to find?
So they're, for the CCAs that do not get approved, they are not part of our working budget. So if there ever does come a time where I need to again appeal, they just want to see the data. By data, I mean I need to show them that we have a special education need that indicates that we have a need for CCAs.
Okay.
And then they cover the cost of the CCAs, not the school.
Okay. I know that everybody who is here in person, it might be translation. Do we still want to translate tonight for the recording, or do we want to just invite people to reach out to follow up if they need it?
I think we just move forward with the meeting in English. Also, you can your language caption of choice, and I think we just need to try to speak up and enunciate so that the microphone picks us up.
Yes. And maybe if anybody needs translation, if they could also use the public participation link to reflect that. Do you mind translating that to Spanish so that if we get requests?
The public participation has to be in live at this point too.
Okay, thank you.
So nobody has
So
I
nobody's
think there's a public participation list.
Okay,
So
so the link is not
it's
an option
only
at
view.
this point. Okay.
It's only a view streaming.
Okay. And then was there anything else in the appeals that needs to be updated on?
No, that's about it. I can bring a little clarity because then I did get have an exchange with JD again. When I first mentioned quorum, as long as you're polling your LSC, that's good enough. But she meant polling in person. So I stand corrected. She wanted the polling to be in person. For me, did it make sense to poll in person if we had no quorum? Because then, we can't have a legitimate vote. So then when she said prioritize polling your LSC, that to me said, okay, so if we don't have quorum, then I need to find out what the LSC, how the LSC feels, whether or not they're in favor of the safety plan. And so when the Fatima, Victor, Rodrigo, and Alexis told me that they were not going to be able to make it, I said, okay, well, at least let me know after you review the plan and the documents if you can be so kind as to email Ms. Kearns and myself so that you can let us know how you feel, so at least we're polling them. But she polled the people, and she said for me to ask the LSC how we would feel about reading the emails, and then we can submit to Jadine through her Google form how many people, the people that we polled in person, and then we can send her another point of the people that we polled, including the emails. But we would have to agree to that.
Okay, I think this is something that we can go over at the end and really see how much discussion there is to have. Usually, if we're all in agreement anyways, then there's kind of a point for this heavily tilted one way or the other. So maybe that can just be like at the end of the discussion. Thank you for following up and clarifying. New business, LSC membership and vacancies. Ruth Cruz has officially resigned. So we do have an open community seat in addition to the open parent seats. We did a today for we are expecting another shortly. And somebody else has also indicated that they are interested in the community rep position. So that is on Tuesday's agenda for us to go by them. Do we need to list every person who has applied on there? I'm looking at you because you're my cool guy. Or should I follow up?
I think we need to follow up. I think it's just a matter of in the agenda saying no appointees, I guess, or no.
Okay, and that's how I have it worded.
Yeah.
But if I am mistaken, then
I don't think the names are
okay.
listed.
As long as they submit their application by the time of the meeting.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So hopefully next week we will have on your team. The school safety discussion. Can we actually set it up so that I can briefly share? Or should I?
Use that, share the agenda.
No, I wanted to go over, we had talked about the meeting that I had with JD's team and the other LSU chairs. I can just read it out loud. If anybody needs to see it, I can show you. But we had a meeting on April 20th with all of the LSU chairs at schools who do still have SROs and with JD Chow's office. So she is the head of school safety and security for the entire district. So the process that she wanted us to go over and share, it says, although CPS has historically used CPD SROs as part of the safety strategy for many other schools, the district acknowledges that it is critical for CPS to review and reimagine a vision for the future of safety in schools that considers the further reduction or even elimination of the SRO program. For the 2020 board resolution, the CPS Board of Education the exact verbiage of that was CPS must develop an inclusive, thoughtful, and expeditious process to develop and implement alternative systems of safety for CPS students in every school that prioritizes their physical and social and emotional well-being, learning, and transformation. And then they gave us a timeline on when that was supposed to, like the steps that were supposed to be taken. So they said in April, there should have been a whole school safety committee, which I don't know the time, but we proposed that committee. Review and discuss safety data with focus on racial equity. Solicit feedback from the school community on the current state of safety at the school, with a particular emphasis on capturing student voice. Review your school's current vision for school safety and update if desired. Between May 1st and May 12th, we were supposed to get an updated school safety plan that included a recommendation on the future state of program and state plan. Between May 15th and 19th, we were supposed to incorporate the feedback from school community and stakeholders, submit the plan to the network chief, the network safety manager, and SEL specialist for budget review, and then finalize the plan for the presentation and later. Did that go through the network chief and the network safety manager and SEL specialist?
The SEL specialist, no. The network chief, yes. The deputy chief, she's the one that oversees her.
Okay. And then out of 152 total high schools in the district, at the start of this year, there were still 17 schools with 2 SROs, 23 with 1, and then 112 that have no SROs. In our neighborhood, did both remove them. They're kind of scattered. The ones that still have them tend to primarily be like Inglewood, that sort of area. Schools that traded in one or both of them received almost $3.8 million in trade-off funds to pay for staff and program-related alternative safety interventions. This is currently considered recurring funding, so every year they get it. The vast majority of that was used for staffing, like private culture coordinators, security officers, youth intervention specialists, additional assistant principals, that sort of thing, the rest of the programming. Because the way that they allocate that funding is based on something called a school equity index. So different schools get different amounts. For us, those spots are $75,000 each, just based on what our index is. And so that would be an annual amount rather than a one-time fee, or one-time payment. A lot of the guiding principles are actually listed in the reflection, so I'll just go ahead and take a look at those and use the actual reflection for reading that right. One other thing in terms of the process, it recommended that we have an assessment of the existing safety supports and making sure that everybody who's involved in this process is going to hear with them, and talk through how the restorative justice principles are incorporated into the current practices, and then think about that, not just in terms of next year's official plan, but really thinking about that from a long-term perspective for the next 3 to 5 years, so that those safety plans are steps in that direction, including a plan for reflection on the progress towards that, and then making sure we're communicating that to the whole school and community. Do we have the info about the current safety performance? So not next year's plan, but the current. We go over that. I don't know. I would assume that that's out. So
yeah, we plan on giving the floor to Ms. Paredes so that she can explain the proposal of our upcoming school year safety plan. But within that, there's also the points on what we currently have and how we currently continue to make adjustments in the school year. Ready? Okay. Ms. Paredes, you have the floor.
So I just want to start us off by sharing what's the goal that I set with the what I call restorative interventionist team, and that includes, in my view, this entire team of people that support our students is our youth intervention specialists, our security teams, and our mentors that are all working towards this goal. So at the end of last year, starting the school year, I took the data from the previous school year in terms of what was happening on all of the scenes in the school, what I was seeing and hearing from teachers, and then I developed a goal. And I went over those goals with the co-parent climate team at the end of last during sessions. The goal is in a multiple learning environment by defining expectations and responsibilities related to behavior within and outside of the classroom that will align to the goals of the school and our school code of conduct, and communicating those to all stakeholders. So by developing restorative school-wide and classroom structures, we will nurture spaces that enable students to navigate challenging issues that are free of threats to emotional and psychological harm and intimidation. So the development of clear responses and communication structures, the restorative office will continue to provide adequate individualized restorative support and consequences to students who violate our school-wide and school code of conduct expectations. So we're kind of thinking of just the overall need for us to develop a system that starts with business classrooms, roll out into the hallways, and then are shared within our common spaces. And it's adapted. So there we were last year just coming back from the pandemic. There was a lot of adjusting, and then we kind of learned, and we learned a lot of the needs students were coming back with, and we had works to address those needs. So seeing the data that we're seeing now in terms of our last school year and this school year, we were seeing that this kind of mindset shift was having a really positive impact in the data that we're seeing. So I want to share a little bit about that. So some of the things that we're seeing overall is that we're seeing an increase in accurate documentation of the infractions that are taking place, with the timely response of low-level infractions, leading to an increase in adult-to-student interaction. So on a day-to-day basis, our security guards, our staff is interaction, having more just one-to-one conversations in the hallways, in the classrooms, when students and having short conversations as security guards engage with them to reinstate the presence in the classroom. So that was our ultimate goal, that the student is going to be a learner, is going to be in the classroom for, and not removed and that the learning environment. We saw a decrease in infractions as a response of our interaction with students, our proactiveness to having conversations and being in that, having those interactions, we saw a decrease in interactions related to fighting, related to concerns that are higher level, what are considered higher level infractions in student conduct. We also worked on developing a safe space this school year and also a sensory room, so we have developed 2 spaces that are which have led to success. So those spaces became available for students and we're working to make them available during lunches, aside from having the library, which is a space where they like to hang out during lunch. They also have that space, which is 125, which is where our mentors and restorative youth restorative interventions is at the moment. That's where the space is. So I just want to share just a few data points that have led to these bullet points here. So, and I'm looking at the school, we're looking at the data from 2021 to 2020, 2021, 22 to 2022, 23. And I'm acknowledging the fact that Foreman, I wouldn't compare it to just one particular school, but I did want to compare it to some set of data to see. I am seeing numbers as soon as I look at the fighting, which is a 3-3 and a 4-6. I'm seeing it decrease. But the other.
Pause you for 1 second. So this set of data here is our school-based data, and then it's compared to the same exact data but for the network. So it's comparing us to the rest of the entire network 14.
Right. So as I was saying, so in both sets of data, we're seeing a decrease, which is good all around. But then I wanted to see it as just kind of to reflect on our interventions this year, to reflect on the systems that we put in place. How well are we doing? And so what, as Mr. Samia has pointed out, this is Foreman's data.
Can we try to control plus one more, just one thing?
And then this is the network data. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you can get a closer glimpse of that. Go ahead.
I see the 100 and yes. Right.
So, yeah, thank you. Let's look at that. So, as you look at these numbers, our 3-3, which is fighting, 2 people. Last school year, we had 42 documented cases. This school year, we have 21 only, and this school data was pulled today. So I started noticing this right at the semester. I pulled the data again to take a look at this and reflected on security, and I kind of talked about some of the things that we were doing, that we were seeing this. They are personally also seeing these still, that we're having that feedback as well. We are basically at 50% of where we were last school year at the end of the school year. When I compare that to the network is at 80% of where they were at the end of the school year. So we're doing significantly better than the network as compared to with these numbers. If I look at other data points down here, fighting, more than 2 people are injured, which is a little bit different. Last year we had 48 documented cases, this year we only have 4. This, as compared to the network, goes from 419 to 243. So we were at 8% of where we were last year, as opposed to the network being at 58% of where they were last year. There's other data points that I also want to point out, and we can pause for a moment to take a look at this, and you have access to this as well, I believe. And it's just like points that we don't even have to address. Like for example, like 5-6, which is gang activity or over display of gang affiliation. We've only had 2 documented cases of that this school year, so that is one thing that sometimes in communities, families are concerned with. But we have been responsive with security, our SROs, as an admin team have been responsive to address things that are taking place and to prevent things from happening so that it's not an issue in our hallways, it's not an issue within the culture of the school building, it's not an issue within our student population. And so that is compared to not even a point that we have to address. Well, at the network, the number of documented cases from last school year to this school year actually went up by 4 cases. So those are some of the data points that are leading me to this conclusion or this connection between the one-to-one interaction that we're having on a daily basis between all of our security guards that have gone through restorative practices training. So last school year, to address some of the points of what we were doing previously, our entire security staff went through a summer week-long training where we were in our restorative practices training doing new routes. We have continued to work with new routes this school year to continue to push that out to staff. We're looking forward to them increasing that and continuing to work with them next year to be more, offer more individualized support to teachers. So going to their classrooms, observing them, giving them feedback on their norms and such, so that it's just increased levels of support to just have this holistic approach to responding to students with a restorative mindset. Not only layers to that by adopting conscious discipline, which is an adult-first curriculum in terms of like how are we responding to students, or how are students responding, where is that response coming from, and how do we help that student understand it, and then in a situation of potential anger or the students, how do we help that student de-escalate? So that is the ultimate goal, that there should be multiple layers to the support that we're offering students, starting with the classroom. So that is, I'll share with you later, the question is one of the priorities that we're setting for the next school year within our students. So I'll pause here, just to give some time for reflection and for some questions.
I mean, like, this is such an improvement, and you know, time where when you come to shopping.
And stress, because a lot of the teachers were sharing, and they made it clear that they were noticing shifts in the hallways, they were noticing just changes in the bathroom, they were noticing a lot of changes just visually, right? We look at the data to confirm what we see and just to confirm that our systems are working and to tweak, because if they're not working, we want to address that. And so I think that not only does that trust, it just shows us the shift in the culture of the building, which is something that we really want to address. But not only that, I communicate that it really shows the collaboration that's taking place between our attendance office, our sort of interventionist office, our security guards, and so it's a very, I think it's a system that's responding really well with the responsibility. What they're doing is just having more regular meetings with our security members. I have also, to your point, like how are we reflecting, one of the things that I reached out to New Roots is to ask for support, and so this summer I'm going to have a 2-day retreat with the security team to reflect on our data, including our SROs and including the restorative interventionist team that works in 125. So to reflect on the data and to include them in the goal setting for the next school year. Which is one of the things that we've been applauded for when we go to our meetings with like other network working schools or tier schools, is our inclusion of the security members in the planning and execution and the reflection of the procedures that we're putting in place.
So I just want to add to that point, because quite often when we think of the safety plan, obviously we want to prioritize our students, and we should. But if we go to simply like, what are we putting in place for our students? But I'm proud of our team here at Foreman, and I dare to challenge other schools that what we do, I think, slightly different and better and more deliberate is triangulate all of this information in order to give the best type of reaction to the student. Because if we're not, first of all, documenting correctly and accurately, then we don't know our data. If we don't document and tag it by the actual infraction code using the student code of conduct and then tracking our data over time, we're not going to give the best possible reaction to our students or our school need. And I think over the last 2 years, that's what we've gotten really better at, is our systems of documentation, accurately using Aspen, using the reports from Aspen to create our data sheet, and then in order to, I think that is something that usually is not taken into account. We immediately just go to, are you doing restorative practices? You know, are you calling parents and having parent conferences? We do all of that, but we have to be deliberate and align it to the actual infraction code and what the need is at the school. And I like that from that continued growth of our team in that process.
Yeah, I did notice in the Five Essentials survey, which I know was filled out before this info came out, but it seems like the teacher's perception of fighting is that it's much more common than it is. And so by doing this and being able to follow up and share that, like, hopefully that also gives people the reassurance of like, no, you know, like, that was a problem. I mean, realistically, it was, but so that because, you know, you're in your classroom, you don't necessarily know what's going on all the time. And so being able to say, hey, you know, we can only see what's right in front of us. And so that way they can look and say, oh, great, in this area.
Even Donna and I were talking a little bit earlier, or just reflecting on last year. It was very intense last year, and I think that a lot of people felt it, and we were just kind of responding to the situation. I think that, and that's the same thing that I communicate with our security team, that just our analysis of data is really important because we need to know where our areas of need are. So that's what we're doing on the floors, right? What are the areas of need within the school building? Where should our security stations respond more adequately? And so that's all a reflection of what we're seeing. One of the things that I would be the first to point out is that our level 1 and level 2 infractions have increased dramatically by at least 1,000. And I think that that's also added to a more systematic approach to capture the things that actually happen within the school building. People support that, right? So that if failing to attend class is a thing that is very visible within our data, like then how are we, and that is also something that the culture finance has discussed, how are we addressing that, not only with the security guards working with students in classes, with the security guards proactively talking to students, but also what's happening in the classroom to help students engage in a different way that's not going to have them walk out of that space. And so another data point that I'm not sharing here, just for privacy, is looking, and another thing that we can do is just reflecting on teacher write-ups, right? And what is the reason the students are being written up for, and then addressing those things in particular by providing the support for the students. And so we started to do a little bit of that this year, but I think that we're putting it into our goals next year to really just roll it out from the very first day of school, to roll out that support for teachers and also the education of how to access that support.
You know, you have to look at question, right? So is it that they don't want to be in class, or is it that for a couple of years they're socialized or completely off, right? They're not really is it that it's not even about class, it's about some other unmet need, and they're like, this is my way to see my friends that I didn't see for 2 years. Yeah. And that sort of thing. And I think, you know, we need to make sure that we're all not, because it's not like, I'm sure it's frustrating. Yeah. I don't want to minimize it or excuse it, but also like when we think about, you know, solutions, and from our perspective, looking at it as a safety thing, like, it's really a big safety issue, and you know, and then that's when we need to say, so do we use the most important things? So do we use the violence, drug activity down, which was a big one, you know, and then like we can move on and say, now, how do we figure out what those needs are and meet them without necessarily being big disciplinary things, but just really looking at need-based.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of all of those things. And then it's also us acknowledging that there's always a better way of gathering this data. So at first, we just relied on teachers taking accurate attendance, and we knock on wood that it's as accurate as possible, right? But sometimes the students go to see their counselor, and they're marked absent. That is never really corrected. Although we'll see Johnny and Kathy, and there's no way of documenting that attendance. And students are caught in the hallway, they're escorted to class, where we hope that they take attendance accurately. So we started to think that through, and we started to change Johnny and Kathy's IDs when they're being visited, so that attendance can be accurately taken. Our security have been equipped with like devices that they have on themselves that are connected to a wireless scanner. So hall sweeps data is gathered and immediately speaks to a spreadsheet which is connected to our attendance office. So now we're filling in the gaps of where we weren't gathering accurate data. And so I think it's definitely a little bit of the impact of the pandemic, but then it's also us improving the way we gather our information. Again, the reason why we need to improve those things is to respond correctly, right? We can't just not have any data and try to come up with a response. It may not be addressing the actual root cause. So this helps us identify the root cause a little bit clearer.
So having seen those shifts in data, and some of the priorities are similar priorities to the last school year. Some of them are adjusted to continue to make some gains within the culture of the building, within the student safety. And overall, this is a place of learning. The attention that it's going to support academics in the school. So in terms of the priorities that we've set for ourselves within this physical safety, we have a goal of priorities to decrease the number of repeat low-level infractions, which is those pertaining to classroom avoidance or negative classroom behavior. Continue minimizing of 4 to 6 level infractions through proactive interventions, proactive support from SROs, through mentorship and education on behaviors outlined in the school code of conduct, and analyzing support measures and ensuring that they are bridging positive. So I think the convert is to educate all and our students on the student code of conduct, and also talking to them about expectations of behavior by grade level, because all of our students are emotionally and just mentally in a different place based on whether they're in 9th grade or in 12th grade. We just see different behaviors from them in the hallways and in the classrooms. So to speak to those behaviors by grade level, that's an intention that we have for the next school year to continue to improve, as well as supporting teachers within and understanding the student code of conduct and the things available for them, responding and supporting students, and also the rights of students, because the student code of conduct is also the student's bill of rights. So how are you respecting that student's rights? The work in terms of emotional support at the family level to truly assist the whole learner, maintaining and enhancing structured supports within the building by providing resources, safe spaces, and establishing connections between staff and students. So to really have a safe space available throughout the entire school day, staff, so that students can have access to it and seek support if necessary. We saw that with peace circles that we were able to hold certain conversations, that the threat of a fight was eliminated, and students were walking away with a handshake because they had an hour with an adult holding mediated conversation. And so it is time, like there's time that has to be invested into this, but we're also seeing that students are walking away with just a different perspective on how to approach conflict. We did expect between students and staff. Promoting conflict resolution through restorative practices. This would also include rolling out the conscious discipline curriculum, which is an adult-first curriculum, which is like we have to be learners, and understanding how we're responding to students and helping them de-escalate when necessary. And hosting workshops that surround practice interventions when appropriate for prevention of conflict. And overall, a goal is to really connect all of the offices and support students, the BHT team, the culture and climate team, the social workers. So it's kind of a very holistic approach and a very clear understanding of the roles and responsibilities of each team and the way that they support the student as well as the teacher in the growth of the school.
I know it says continued this is of the escalation period and option for practice. Who is going through it? Is everybody in the building going through that, or specific team members going through it, and how much exposure is having to recognizing that, and also then what is the follow-up movement to identify who are getting it?
So in terms of, we actually had a training scheduled about 2 weeks ago that was intended, and I communicated to the Office of Social and Emotional Learning Office that my intention was to have that training for security staff and CCAs because they are often the first response, right? And so I want to be very intentional with people receiving this so that it's directed at them and it's not an entire staff that have different relationships with students. Unfortunately, we weren't able to hold that because there was a lot happening in the city of Chicago and that they had to respond to those things first. And so that is that happened. The next is going to be trained. It's going to come in phases because I think that it depends on who we're speaking to. And so the first set of people that will be trained will be our security and our
Most likely trained counter
because they encounter students and are responding to challenges and behaviors and with just higher frequency during school. In terms now with new groups has offered like return practice training that has been the entire staff. They've also had a very specific training for security guards that took place last summer. We're then going to do a reflection this summer with the security staff. There have been then trainings for teachers, and then we're looking to then bring them more PPs for individual groups of teachers.
So that's really good where each of them already are in
right, and
familiarity.
Exactly. So one of the points of feedback that I received from my teacher was that there was a session that was that he found very informative, but he felt as though like it would have been correct to go down to the next step, right? And so that's what our intentions are to just be more direct. We're looking to have one person that can continue on a weekly basis now, so hopefully we're looking to increase that to 2 people to support our tiers in our school year, so that they are available to give teachers specific feedback and after observing a class, for example. So we've done that this school year and just increasing that support next school year. And then we can also, just on our end, really highlight potentially where that could be a teacher request, but it also could be something that is referrals. That we're seeing in our referrals and teachers, one particular teacher is referring students 10 or 15 times for this behavior, then potentially that teacher can receive support and how do we respond to that behavior? Or what is a tool or a system that you can put in place to decrease that behavior? We also offered one parent workshop this last year. It wasn't very highly attended, but we're going to continue to push that because I think that this is parents are one of the stakeholders as well as students. And so in terms of like conscious discipline, we're also considering how do we educate students in this science because that is right science.
Like I want to be mindful of everybody else this time today, but that is a priority for CAC as well. And so we have to figure out how that other responses that meet everybody's needs, or not everybody's, but more that meet everybody's. Thank you.
So I just wanted to highlight some of the specific SRO supports that have led or are part of each of these points that I've highlighted. So in terms of physical safety, I think that these are just some things that I pulled out that have led to physical that have not only been part of the physical safety that has existed and that we have felt and have experienced in the last school year, but also that we're looking to also increase and integrate our SRO into more seamlessly, I can say. So in terms of physical safety, some of the things that we've benefited from this school year is that we've been present to address lockdown needs. This school year we had to have a lockdown because of a potential threat to the school building. And so there was that benefit of having our SROs, which it was a hard lockdown, which you can't lift that lockdown unless a police officer lifts the lockdown, because we do have SROs and we have that in the school building that they were able to do that once they deemed the school to be safe. In response to such threats, while aiding and expediting external police and EMT response when necessary. There's also we are well aware of the benefit from the assistance and dismissal, where our SROs are present at dismissal, usually on the corner where the bus station is, the bus stop is, with students, talking with students. We are aware of sometimes there's things that are happening within the community. There's things that are happening and that students make us aware of in the building that may be a potential threat at dismissal. So that has been a benefit to have our SROs work with us to have additional support at dismissal when necessary. There's enhanced student safety by providing community bulletin updates, and just being aware of things that are happening in the neighborhood and how we can respond to anything that can come into the building as a result of this. So sometimes our students make us aware of things that they're they're coming in with things that are happening in the community, and I think that has helped us be more proactive instead of reactive to things that may take place. We've also done having our necessary as well. In terms of emotional safety and relational support, each SRO this year has been responsible for 10 student cohort with a total of 40 students for check-in and check-out. This is aside from the just mentorship that is already taking place in the hallways. That is conversations with students on a daily basis in the lunchroom. When students are walking in the morning and checking with them, they have been provide conflict resolution education resources provided to parents. So if something happens in the community and parents are seeking support, our SROs have been able to educate them on and provide them that understanding of how our systems work. And then student advocacy and mentorship. I think that's one of the big ones that our students are feeling, that they're feeling their presence as mentors within the building, and just as an ally. Overall, all encompassing priorities and some of the other things that have taken place is the prevention and teenage violence workshop that has taken place through our SROs, the Chicago Police versus Foreman annual basketball tournament, which is very fun to attend, and the connection to college resources and post-secondary advice. I'm sorry for that. I have to say there was a thought that I can't remember what I missed. I forgot seriously. And just the last thing I do, just want to point out really quickly, because just the community response that we've had. There's a survey that where we had 305 people respond. An overwhelming public response and for us, both of our SROs. And data that goes to that. Some of that data was some of the things that they feel that our SROs are supporting within the school building and the community. Some of that was really, and I think this is a strong point for me, as the SRO relationship building, and all of these graphs support the mentality of the school and understanding that there's a positive relationship between our student body, the community, and our SROs. And then overall, there's a support to retain our SROs for next school year, with 1 being highly disagree and 5 being highly agree. And that takes us to the end here. So I will perhaps any just questions that you all have about the safety plan or just in general the views for next school year, or the work that we've done this school year.
So I know for us it's been great conversations with a lot of parents, teachers, and even student ways. I think I've done so much this year, but last year was a big concern. And I know that it's something we've seen and throughout at least growing topic. What are we doing specifically to address that? And then also, like, let's say a student is on something, what is the next steps?
So we've actually seen an increase in documentation, but from what I understand from our staff, is that we've also seen a decrease from the smells that exist in our hallways and right? And so we are responding to it just more, I would say, more timely fashion. Looking for the next school year, we're going to add, we currently have 1 new intervention specialist. We have 1 part-time member, but we're looking at another member to the team, which is going to again help us just bring that timeliness and respond to things of this nature and just operate support. So one of the things that I would like to increase for next school year is just the education to the child and the parents. What we started doing this school year is just a more systematic response to it. So the first interaction was a parent conference, right? Having a conversation with the parents, telling them about what's taking place, what we actually identified, what we found, which then is, in many cases, that's the only response that we needed, and then that kind of just fixes itself at home. The second event that we take on our student book on what are the responses that we can have. And I think that the ultimate goal is to support the student, right, and making safe choices. But if it's creating a safety concern for us, and there's a potential to apply either into suspension or suspension, depending sometimes if there has been cases where it's been excessive, that we have found that student has 9 days to apply. And that's clearly not for that starts to we start to kind of look into that more carefully. And so we're just trying to, I think one of the things that I hope to do is just have more increased communication with families and eventually just continue to educate our community in terms of, in my opinion, our students and our parents in terms of the impact of the drug use. It's very challenging. There's coffee milk everywhere, which makes it harder to think back.
So another thing just to continue to add to that question is that, again, we try to examine how can we fill in the gaps so that we can be better informed as to what's going on in the building, aside from the teacher complaining like, oh my God, there's a smell in that corner, right? So one of the things that I was very proud of with our first participatory budgeting program where I applied for a $15,000 grant for students to do something with that money. And what they ended up doing, a large portion of their own decision making was to purchase very highly sensitive and specific smoke detectors.
I was going to ask about the follow-up on that because I remember.
And so we've just finished this year. The rest of the smoke in the restrooms. And so now what that's doing is that's just triggering a notice to our security who can better respond, right? And we don't announce it because, unless our kids are watching it on YouTube, but we don't like to announce it because we don't want them to get destroyed, right? They're in the restrooms, and thus far we've had no issues, but we then respond. But now we just had to also have a layer of understanding what that response is going to look like, because our security were very with it. They know they're not going into stalls. You know, we just can't do that, but we can knock on the door. Let's go, everybody out, right? And so now we can ask students to, especially if we just open the door and there's like 20 students in the restroom, we can just say, okay, let's go. We gotta get to class, right? So we can at least respond. Things that are this year, all our case manager, Ms. Wu, and our social workers have been trained in something called SBIRTS. It's an acronym for screening. You can Google it, but it's for screening and being able to provide recommendations for substance abuse. And so they've been trained in that now, and so now it's them that are going to be able to, if there's a recommendation or a referral to the behavioral health team, they can better assess the student with the parent and make recommendations. Something that I was working with with Ms. Valentine, our youth intervention specialist, and one of the social workers is, which is part of our safety plan, is how can we, aside from offering workshops that may be attended by parents or not attended by parents, I think we've been getting a lot of feedback, positive feedback on our website, and how comprehensive it is, add a portion, very basic tips and strategies that parents can utilize that can be found on our website. So that's another thing that we're trying to do.
And are those education systems taking into account that we were in a mental health crisis? Like, you know, there's all sorts of like warnings being issued by the American Academy Pediatric System and recognizing for some of these kids, this is how they are coping, particularly, you know, trauma in general, and then also one of the things that we saw recently, there was a shortage of ADHD medication, and there are a lot of kids out there, and a lot of adults, not just kids, who are then finding other ways, yes, to self-medicate, because especially if they lean so heavily on medication and not behavioral therapy, and again, especially in a community like this, where there are a lot of fears. Are dangerous, or have the trouble you could get into, but really say like, what identifies as unmet.
So I think that there's a lot of things that are need to be reflected in this area. The ultimate goal is that no child is going to go unseen, right? And one of the things, for example, that we're reflecting on the next school year as we kind of connect our student and support offices and teams is how do we give students more avenues for communication. So one of the things that we came up with for next school year is to have QR codes around the school building where the student is more consistent student. It's not a conflict that they are going through with another student, right? It's not something that in terms of so to have that student say, what support do you need? Let us know. We'll be able to connect with some of the one and help start that conversation. So that's kind of like what myself and two members of the school went to enhance discipline training in Ohio, and we're really thinking through just how do we start to just kind of provide more levels of communication within our students and our support staff, and just increase the education starting from the first day of school.
And is the staff getting education? Because one thing I noticed the pattern of is like, we're a lot of teachers who said that they wanted the SROs involved in like from a criminal perspective. Like, there are more than a few teachers here. What are you guys arresting kids for doing? So there's kind of some missed opportunity for support.
Yes, so like I said before, the conscious discipline rollout, it's an adult first. So it's a reflection, and this is very important, and this is kind of like what the goal is for us is to really understand where students are coming from and the community that we serve. And then if it's a trauma-informed staff, then what does that mean in terms of what we're expecting in response? Do we have room for growth? Of course we do, right? Every school does.
And then there's markers about what are the
And it's
solutions.
important to recognize that, because then we can start planning towards that. But in terms of like having our SROs or our students, that's not.
Right, and it's like, to be clear, I know that that is not your role, right? I don't think that is your desired role in the district administration's
Right,
desired role.
and that is communicating to all of our staff
yeah.
members that that's not the role of our SROs. Our SROs are mentors.
Yeah, and there's way it was like, I know that it's more that if that's their preference, and I feel like it's
Right, and
that
also,
on the staff members.
and I do recognize that we have a different, kind of push and pull with our staff where there's more of the, like, the team, right? There's more of the traditional desire for what a team was, right? Versus what we are trying to do now, which is, so so the sort of practices, it's not that our goal is to support the child in acknowledging what is, if there was harm done, what that harm was, and how we would respond, because the ultimate goal is to have that student in the classroom and be a learner. That's their place to learn in this school. So to create that learning community, we want to have a strong relationship between teachers and students, and I do acknowledge, and I think everybody in this room acknowledges that not only the student need to have responsive and also like growth within our schools. So that does exist. Sorry to have moved them from the building, remove them from the school, get rid of them so that we solve the problem, have our SROs arrest them, but I know that everybody here doesn't believe it, and our SROs don't take that approach to it.
Right, and to be clear, I was not concerned that you would be following through on that design, but that's where it's more like, what are we doing to address those specific philosophies with those individuals, as opposed to like a policy.
And so one of the things is just to really like educate staff on where is Foreman going with their approaches to supporting students. I think one thing that we need to do is acknowledge the population that we serve, and then acknowledge how we're going to support our students, and have them kind of support them at their specific level in terms of what growth.
If we poll you right now and then get an understanding of where would you vote in favor or against our safety plan? Thank you.
So that's what I was referencing earlier on, is just being more kind of as we differentiated the classroom, differentiating our approaches to trainings for our staff, to acknowledge, like I said earlier, who are we receiving referrals for, what are the referrals for, what are we seeing within the practices in your classroom, how can we support you to meet the students' needs.
And so just to continue to answer that question, we mentioned that we would continue to beef up the training around understanding the student code of conduct and the pre-goals, which we did a little bit of that, but we did a review of new sections within the student code of conduct. But I think for the upcoming school year is to really dig deep with our staff on understanding that, number one. And number two, this year with the training of a specific core group around conscious discipline. Again, the hope is to follow the train-the-trainer model so that the core group begins to then expand that training for the upcoming school year. Well, that was it for the presentation, unless we want to continue questions or comments or anything that we want to talk about.
acknowledge Ms. Valdez for the great work she did, and the presentation was brought to light a lot of, information that we needed to have at that time. Thank you, Ms. Valdez.
So I'd like just to get that some thoughts out there, how we would be inclined to vote if this was an official vote, but we're calling it a poll right now, where we would stand on our proposed safety plan for next school year.
Not a roll call.
Yeah, so we can just each vote out and say the percent on it. Looking at, like, I know that resources are always an issue when it comes to these kinds of things rolled out. And I think that we could use some of that money that we could be put to better use in other ways, and maybe one would still allow us to kind of to be addressing the reasons that people want them here. And then there would be a discussion about what to use that money with, but I guess would be better off just waiting to see if that is something necessary. It doesn't make sense to have a big conversation about that if that is not the majority. And I do hope that moving forward, when we do these surveys, that we are talking about alternatives so that people can actually rank the options. And not just yes or no, but saying, like, here are the different options that we can use that money for. If I think that's an important part of the conversation that doesn't happen in the surveys, that might give us different results.
Safety plan is including both of our.
Right.
Correct.
And so the only modification
And I think for a matter of record, we're trying to determine whether we're going to vote for the safety plan. Right?
Correct.
yeah, so that's I was trying to discuss that that's the only part of it that I would want to change would be then we could agree to drop to one and then we briefly talk about what we do with extra funding, but the rest of it sounds fantastic.
I just think, I just want to share my 2 cents on this. I feel like the fact that we've been implementing this plan, and so far the effectiveness of it has been definitely demonstrated through the data. Perhaps continuing another year with the presented to us with the 2 officials who see what the data is. I'm in favor to approve the plan as it is.
I think what you both mentioned was kind of where clarification you mentioned about voting on the plan or the SRO. I think that was great clarification because that's kind of something that I wanted, because I was thinking, like, if we do get rid of SROs, how's that going to affect the plan? That's one of the things that I was thinking. But I would push to remove both SROs. I would rather see more like an intervention officer or more counselors in the school, and a lot more support for the security and the students who are actually dealing with these more issues.
So, I mean, I'm in favor of our safety plan because I had a hand in writing it. One of the things that I want to emphasize is that the data that we wanted to show and highlight in the presentation shows an emphasis of how more one-to-one attention best serves students to decrease infractions and in particular behaviors that we don't want to see. And I think the SROs, aside from playing a role in mentorship, they give us the bonus of these other things that were highlighted also in the presentation. And for me, the people that voted within the survey, although I understand that we can advertise survey really from the district is simply to assess the people's thoughts and opinions around SROs purely, not on other programs. And so where the other programs have to be lobbied and discussed and designed are within the safety plan. And so we have a lot of things in place that were obviously intentionally written within the safety plan that also couch our SROs, but I would be in favor of listening to the over 300 people that filled out the survey, and 275 of which are the people that come through these doors every single day, which are our students, and support the current safety plan that we have in place.
Myself, I would say that not knowing what the additional funds would go to has me hesitant. I think will help me make a decision. So where would that funding, where people want to go, where would it be allocated and how it would be used? So for now, I would approve it as is, only because I have no further information to go on with.
Also the fact that the district tonight, the instructions were for me to send that over to JD on the part. So I'll get that to her today. And I am going to, unless somebody objects to it, I will include Ms. Alice's because she was here for 95% of the discussion, which to me was a really important part of that process, was for all of us making informed decisions on that. Does anybody have a problem with me including her in the conversation?
Ms. McKay, I think for the record, she did.
Yeah, it was just
and it was not,
because we were complete. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page if we include her vote is that.
got it.
Yeah, I will let JD process. Originally, when she said we still on record not to have the formal vote that we have for him, but I'll confirm that to make sure it wasn't a misunderstanding so that we're in compliance moving forward as well.
Yeah, and then again, just to another thing to reiterate is that I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that based on the length of time or try to make judgment on an understanding of the safety plan. So I would find it hard to say, well, they were here for 95% of the meeting, therefore I will count or I will not count, because we don't really know what their understanding and what their full understanding of that plan is. I also want to mention that part of the thinking through of the entire safety plan is also knowing that once one there's no and then say, oh my God, next year dating give me an SRO back. That's not going to happen. If we discontinue also the service of the SROs, then I can't also go back and say, give me them back next year. That can't happen. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's what they mentioned to us. And again, based on our interactions with the SROs and what we see here day to day, this is why we designed this particular post-school safety plan. So if we say I'm in favor of no SROs, and if we say we're in favor of only one SRO, basically that's still the same response. That means I'm voting against the safety plan. So I just want to be clear. So we're not voting on one or none. We're voting on not accepting the safety plan versus that should be the vote or the poll.
And next year, I do want us to make sure that we are following the guidelines that are issued on the transfer and the community feedback and that sort of thing, because that was definitely an obstacle in this, including the fact that it put us really struggling time-wise, when we're getting this stuff due in less than 24 hours before we have to vote, and knowing that there is no time to say, oh, people would like more information on anything in this, can we come back another day with that? I think something that will also be helpful just in terms of testing. We have to do this annually. And so in terms of learning, that includes our own learning curve on how we all handle this as a team. I think that it would be really helpful for us to be able to walk through, if one or both were to be removed, what does that look like in terms of police response to an issue? Because that was something that I chatted with the told her saying that they had to learn then new processes because they had relied on the SROs if they needed something, and all of a sudden it's like, well, what do we do? And they found that when they just called straight over to the police station, it did not go well. And so learning who do you call in these situations, and both working within the superior officer. My apologies if I don't get the terminology right. Yes, but yeah, just escalating up the chain of different things of response that they wanted from individual officers, and also working with Ms. Chow's office to make sure that everybody knows the steps in case there is a situation where the police are involved in, and we can make sure that we are familiar as we're voting on safety plan what that looks like.
So I wouldn't, this is again just me as the leader of this school, I see zero value of talking of what ifs when I have a full proposal of the plan that I want in place. So for me, I'd rather talk about the plan that I want.
Well, I'm just next year, these are things I would like to see in our proposals. And that's fine, we could also just have the vote earlier on whether or not to retain them so that safety plan is centered on the results of that vote. And that might be something that we look at. But it's hard to make decisions with this missing information. I understand that from your perspective, there is no alternative, but from people who are saying, if I knew the details of an alternative, this might impact how I feel about it. We are all entitled to our vote on that.
I'm sorry, because I've spoken to Ashton on the chair, if I can just ask a question. I think that, I guess I'm going back to what Mr. Smith saying that we're not voting for or against the SROs, we're voting for a safety plan.
Well, so we are supposed to be voting on whether to retain the SROs or not in it, as well as the safety plan. We had to roll them in together because we didn't get information. I mean, the time that we were
I think it was
to vote this was fine. That every year we are supposed to vote on whether we retain one or both or none of them. So I can, get clarification on what that with more details about that if we want to look into that separately for next year.
So the details that I have right here, clearly from JD, is we don't conduct two votes. We conduct a vote here. The LSC is voting on the whole school safety plan. If your plan is to keep one or both SROs, if your plan says to keep one or keep both, and they say deny that, the plan would be rejected. So we have to couch what our ultimate decision is for the SROs, using things like and couch taking into account what we want out of our SROs, whether we want 1, 2, or none. That would be the design of the safety plan. And JD is saying that we would vote on the whole school safety plan. We wouldn't conduct a vote on SROs and then the safety plan. They both have to live within the same idea, whether again we have no SROs, one SRO, or keep both. They have to be part of the safety plan.
Clarify, because that's not what Dr. Adams and Mr.
I don't go with what Dr. Adams
says. And that was
says.
also not my understanding from the meeting that the LSC should have. So by
Dr.
next
Adams,
year,
with all due respect, does not run my school. He runs Calvin's
So
By
school.
next year, we'll
I
get more information.
and I want to say, that's my understanding as well, and I recall last meeting, when we had this type of conversation, we did vote for SROs, and we voted for the safety plan.
We did.
From the meeting at this point, I do not agree with the safety plan.
And I mean, so in terms of the poll, they do have a majority. But like we have all talked about, everybody needs to learn how this process can be better. And so it seems much easier to say there are things that might help next year instead of waiting until next year. Because if we had rejected the plan, we would have to put together a new plan tonight. Without the other people in the room, that we wouldn't be able to ask. There's a reason that these timelines exist. And so that's a big part of it to say this really put us in a challenging position. And also, I know that the plans are supposed to be developed with a wider range of stakeholders, weighing in, which included community members, which included parents. And the community members and parents were not on that safety plan. Our names are listed on it, and somehow my name was listed on last year's as the chair of the past. We need to make sure that this is not just being put together by staff when the directives from the district are saying that certain things are supposed to be done in that, including also looking at things from an equity lens, looking at things from a racial. We were supposed to, in our survey, we were supposed to ask about financial, like the demographics financially, racially, ethnically. All of this information was not included in that process. And those, like that guidance exists for a reason.
So when was that guidance given to you with that meeting for the sure people?
On April 20th, and I know that I sent you the documents when I got them, and you had told me you didn't get them, but when I pulled my email, I got a response from you saying thank you. When I shared that, I shared that with you, I shared that with the chairs of culture and climate, and I shared that with Ms. Valentina.
Yeah, and we conducted that, we started or initiated that survey to conclude by.
But it didn't include the information that they were asking you to include. And we also then the responses did not, like when we looked at those responses and where they came from, we should have been saying, like the planning, the safety committee should have said we are missing voices. And those voices do need to be included. And if a Google survey isn't bringing them in, we need to be making sure that we are finding better ways to communicate with the community and with the parents so that voices are being heard. And we know that technology in general is a barrier in our school community. I mean, we have people who just got here and like don't have permanent homes. To expect them to be able to, you know, stay on top of Google Forms seems like a pretty big wage.
Yeah, and again, just to reiterate, the survey that we issued is the survey that's provided by the district. That was the survey that the district initially told me to put out to gauge that level of interest understanding as an FYI.
It also did say that the fight to be one of the things listed on there, and you noticed that that was not something that was addressed in the safety plan. But again, like this is lessons moving forward so that we can always be doing better. I hope that in general, each year we are looking at all of the things that we did as an LSC to say how can we do all of these things better. You know, some of us have already been talking about like giving each other feedback on all of our goals, myself included, on ways that we can improve. And so I think that we need to make sure we're being consistent in that approach, especially with something as important as safety and as important as the emotional support that our kids need. I'm agree that our staff needs. Because safety isn't just, I mean, yes, it should be centered on kids, but everybody in this building deserves to be safe and deserves to feel safe. And so hopefully we can make that feel like a much more collaborative process and a process where everybody can come in and responsibility and what resources do I have to make that happen. That's why I was asking the question, how do we help parents do that? You know, like this shouldn't all be on the school level. Anyway, I think
so what will be the next step?
The next step is I just have to email Jadine tonight. In case you did not see it, the agenda for Tuesday has been done. I will see you guys Tuesday, and that's it. This is the meeting on Tuesday. We will keep, you know, multiple meetings, agendas, minutes, budget transfers, and hopefully we can get those wrapped up. And then we need to have our schedules ready on Tuesday because on Tuesday we have to schedule our July organizational meeting. So we want to make sure that we know when we are available because that's no longer following this Tuesday evening structure.
So this, according to JD,
This is it. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
So we still need more polls?
No. Today is the deadline.
Okay.
The poll of the people who are present and sign in. We submit that. I give her the info. It is made, like a note is made that we didn't have quorum, but also like, what are we supposed to do, right? The district has to look at our plan. We can't take that to another thing. So they will just take a look at that. Yeah. So this part is thank you for coming. I appreciate you being here so that we could have asked questions if we needed.
By the way, if he did sign for you want to.
Oh, did you want to speak?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, do you still want to speak?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I apologize.
No, he wasn't the public participation.
Okay, I thought you were just here in case we had questions. I apologize, by all means.
I just wanted to take it long because we got here in 2019.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify our role in the school Kathy and I decided to come to our 19. Our background, I have 24 years on the police department, Kathy had 17. We have 41 years of law enforcement experience that walks in the store every day. We are also additionally trained, because we're SROs, in crisis intervention, advanced youth crisis intervention. That's what we do outside. So we're very familiar with going into homes where kids are not taking their medication, improperly taking drugs and alcohol to supplement with their lacking in taking their medication. Our experience here, when we got here, we were here 6 short months. We bonded with these kids immediately. Okay. And then the George Floyd riots. So one of the things I remember I recall very well, Kathy and I were discussing, we're like, okay, they're going to start kicking SROs out of school. Well, what had happened was, I'm not on social media, Kathy is. The students reached out to Kathy. And what happened, it's probably going to be a shock, but they were very concerned about our well-being. Are you all okay? So we knew right away that whatever we were doing at Foreman, we need to continue to do it. As time went on, I'm sure you're familiar with the Mary James story, how we were able to assist him to college, raise enough money for all 4 years. Another thing that recently happened, this is just from student perspective for kids. Recently, they took 2 band kids, which is in this room, from every public high school in Chicago, and they sent them to Northeastern University, where they were given gift cards and talked about violence in their neighborhood. Well, the conversation switched after they talked about violence in their neighborhood. Let's talk about bad economy in the police. So as this went on around the room, when they got to the 2 Foreman kids from BAM, it wasn't what they wanted to hear. It was called professor and students. These 2 students here at Foreman were like, man, we love our police officers at our school, we respect them. It's mutual respect, we have great relationships with these kids. This is what goes on here with us. I know that, and this is something that obviously I've sat back and just listened to these Zoom calls. I just want you to hear our perspective from what it's like in the school. It's not what people think. It's quite the opposite. Getting back, just a quick gloss over this year. The kids are very comfortable coming to us with information. Whether it be social media posts, where other students are posting pictures with weapons that pose an imminent threat.
Have you seen pictures with that here? At Foreman specifically?
1 second.
Yes.
Yes. So where it poses an imminent threat to every child in this school and staff. There was another incident that happened directly outside this door. It still makes my hair stand up this year. There was some threats between 2 students. Well, one student makes a phone call and brings outside people. It happened right outside this door. I can guarantee Kathy and I stopped someone from getting shot outside this door.
Yeah, my son was right there.
So, okay. So what my point is I want you to everyone to understand that's on this LSC that the day comes where the SROs get removed, you're making the school vulnerable.
I would like to think the police department was still safe if we made that call.
Right.
Despite the fact that I know some officers have said on social media that they would not, that they would refuse to come out to a call to the school and remove it as SROs. I would like to think that at that point the sergeants or GD's office would intervene, and I know that when other schools have had that experience and been told by officers I would like to think that they would.
I will say about that comment that we've been proactive in responding and not have to have a reactive response. And that's part of why there's that feeling. So I don't want to speak about specific incidents. I am responsible for discipline within the school building. I don't want to speak about the specific incidents because I don't want to violate anyone's privacy. But we've had, and this is the reality of the world that we live in, we've had multiple pictures of students with phones and people within the community with phone share. We've had.
Why are parents not being notified?
Because that's private information that I can only notify the parent whose child as well, because it hasn't impacted our school. There has been no impact to the school community.
If there is a threat about our
No, there has been
safety,
no threat to the students.
so this is about a theoretical risk.
So there's a response to images, right? And just us being proactive and engaging in a conversation with that student about the impact of that and having that sort of going. And I think that's what that's what John is coming from. So there has been no threat to the building. There's been also been concerns of the stolen students, not students here at Foreman, students not just at Foreman, but
We live in a community.
So
At the end of the day, we live in a
Yeah,
community,
like-
and what goes on in the community impacts our families in and outside the community.
And so vehicles and things of that nature, and we've been always responsive to discuss things with our students. It's never impacted our school community, but we continue to address it with the students that we are aware of, are involved to inform the families and be engaged. I mean, that's why I say I don't want to bring up individual cases because this is student privacy. And I want to speak to that we support and that's part of like the work being proactive and not wait to have to be reactive. And so I also want to just highlight, and I think where John is coming from is the idea that I was at a school just 2 years ago, and the relationship that students had with us when I was there was nowhere near with the relationship that we have at Foreman here, right? So it was cops in the room, where here is a number of the supportive community that we offer to students. So John's office is another safe space for students to go when they are dealing with something within their community that they have to deal with it and process with somebody that can provide them that guidance. So one thing that I like last year was we didn't think I don't know what to do. So help him and navigate the situation. So I think that's the mentorship, a level of mentorship that we and that's I think the argument that
just two last things. Yesterday there was a critical incident involving a Foreman student that happened at about 2 o'clock in the morning. We were able to get here and gather up all the information of this critical incident to make sure that that incident wasn't going to spill into this building. We were able to get everything in detail of that. By the time we were here maybe 15 minutes, and we had everything where we were able to tell the staff here that there is no threat to this building. That's another advantage you have as a local being here. And lastly, I will say this. I'm a foreigner. We never have a school relationship we have with this kid has exceeded beyond Kathy and Ernest's belief. And this goes on every day. And it's evident. And when they fill out that survey, these kids, they will tell you they want their SROs. Coming here at Foreman, first and foremost, Kathy and I put the kids first. And it goes to these things too, that when we first got here, we noticed Foreman was not getting resources. They weren't getting the team day workshop. They weren't getting the Foreman CPD basketball. We legitimately have a basketball team where one of the players played in Europe. So one of the things that we make sure that Kathy works very hard at is bringing these resources to your school. You have 2 resource officers here, 1 male, 1 female. I am a huge advocate of having 2 SROs, 1 male, 1 female. I cannot reach out to female students and dig deep the way Kathy can. I can reach out and dig deep with the male students. And that's something that goes on here. We go to all their sporting events. We support these kids 100%. Whether it be basketball, soccer, football, every sport we've attended, we attend these games. These kids know. These kids also know that we have an open door policy. And that if it's things struggling at home and or just behavioral issues at home, these things get settled with us in this building. I have always just sat back and watched the Zoom calls for meetings. I just needed to talk to everybody on this LSC that there is so much more going on than meets your eye, especially since you're not in this building every day. I can't count how many times a student has said, don't make me look at the police differently. I can't count how many times school staff, whether it be teachers, that have said, you know, we kind of had a negative feeling about police officers being in school. And you ask them today, after they've seen Gabby and John and Foreman, they flipped. So I want you all to keep this in mind every year you vote. And lastly, since you're talking about where you want to just keep one, I can tell you that you're going to get resistance from our district because it is a total officer safety issue. And I'll just simply go to that incident that right outside that lookout right there. So, and you don't want one SRO out there encountering that because you might have multiple subjects out there with guns. It's just reality. It's what we live in. These kids have access to guns. Like as if you go and grab a pen. That's it. And I will simply say I'm not going to argue about what schools and this and that they've watched got rid of. As far as I'm concerned, all I have to say is the last thing is Denver did the knee-jerk reaction where they kicked every single SRO out of their public schools. They just had a shooting a few months ago. Those SROs are back in the building. Here, you're not getting us back. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to explain to everybody that this is reality, this is what you're looking at. You have the right police officers.
I want to say I appreciate that, and a lot of the work that's being done in the school. I'm aware that you guys are the ones here doing all the work day to day, and I just appreciate that because I hadn't heard that you've had these types of posts before, and you haven't.
Right, I haven't had the opportunity.
So I just want to say
I got invited when we've had these, when we have these particular meetings.
I've always listened.
And public participation is always on the table.
I've always listened to your Zoom calls. I just felt, in fact, I'm going to be blatant. I am frustrated that I have to come here and say this. I'm totally frustrated because the work that Kathy and I have done in this school in 4 years, I couldn't be more proud of. And I've explained that to the staff. The staff knows. We love these kids. We are here for them. They know it. They see it with their eyes. They just know. They see how we interact with these kids. And it's a love fest at Foreman. It literally is. You have staff that has had nothing but problems. I look at these numbers this year with the flights alone. I'm like, everything is working. Everything is working. We get information constantly in our office. Hey, John and Kathy, look, some shit's about to go down. We get it. We notify them right away. There's a reason why your flights in this building have dropped 50%. There's a reason for that. These kids are comfortable.
So just one last thing, and again, I champion what my community wants, but I do want to just share this because I think it's important that I didn't know John and Gabby. They came in, and I'm sure that they probably had conversations with other SROs from other schools, and they came in thinking that they were going to do what all SROs in the district do. And I set a very clear expectation on them. And every year I add a little more. I take another inch. I add a little more. And they keep responding to our needs and my expectations to this point where there was a police matter that took place in the community. The police came in asking questions about students. They were talking to me, our SROs were there. I didn't even have to say anything, or before I even said anything, John and Kathy started to explain everything that I was about to explain to them. There's no arrests that take place here. Students have rights. And they started just to like spew all this stuff that I've been, engaging with them about. And so I was like, I didn't even have to say anything. Because they said,
I would say to the both of you that you are welcome any day to comment and experience today with John and Kathy Foreman. You're more than welcome. Okay? Have a great day. See you Monday.
Finally, I just want to add to that the entire, as John has pointed out, our goal is to decrease price, but the only way that we can do that is by being proactive and not reactive, and that's part of, I think, fitting John and Kathy into the system that we put in place, and they be holistic, which is why there's a really conversation between SROs and the safety plan, which is why the safety plan included both SROs to add those layers of support. Not only do they add that safety, physical safety to the building by helping us with willing people and having them be a part of our systems.
I'm submitting a question.
Adjourn.
Does anybody have anything else, or are we ready to go ahead and adjourn?
is there a note section in the form?
There is not, I read the book on the update page of the question, but I went ahead and submitted it with the numbers. I think you knew our situation about this before. I don't know the version that's needed. I just submitted it right now. It's not unofficial. They will see the results. I know that they have